Some mysteries are meant to be solved. Others linger, haunting us, reminding us of the darkness lurking just out of sight. The case of the River Town Strangler was one such mystery. A cold case that spanned decades, leaving behind whispers of fear, unanswered questions, and a trail of broken lives. Tonight, we take you deep into the heart of Rivertown's most chilling cold case. A story that will make you question everything you think you know about justice, evil, and the shadows we all carry. It all began on a crisp October morning in 1978, when two teenagers stumbled upon a grisly discovery in the Rivertown woods. The body of 23-year-old Jenny Callahan, a waitress at the local diner, was found sprawled on the forest floor. She had been strangled, her face frozen in an expression of sheer terror. Jenny's murder shocked the tight-knit community of Rivertown. She was a beloved daughter, a friend to many, and the kind of person who lit up every room she entered. But the details of her death were far more disturbing than anyone could imagine. The autopsy revealed something even more chilling. Jenny's hands were bound, but there were no signs of a struggle. Her killer had known her, perhaps even gained her trust before ending her life. But who could have done such a thing, and why? News of Jenny's murder spread quickly, plunging Rivertown into a state of fear. Parents kept their children indoors. Businesses closed early, and rumors of a killer lurking in the shadows spread like wildfire. But despite the town's paranoia, the Rivertown Police Department struggled to make progress. There were no witnesses, no clear motive, and no suspects. And as weeks turned into months, the case began to go cold. On Christmas Eve of the same year, Rivertown was rocked by another tragedy. The body of 18-year-old Caleb Myers, a high school senior, was found in the basement of an abandoned building on the outskirts of town. Like Jenny, Caleb had been strangled, his hands bound with the same type of rope. The similarities between the two murders were undeniable. Both victims were young, well-liked, and seemingly had no enemies. But this time, the killer had left a chilling clue. A handwritten note tucked into Caleb's shirt pocket, reading, "You'll never catch me." As investigators pored over the details of Caleb's murder, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The killer wasn't just taking lives, they were playing a game, taunting the police, and leaving behind a twisted signature, a cryptic note at every crime scene. With no arrests and no leads, the people of Rivertown began to turn on each other. Accusations flew. Neighbors grew suspicious of one another, and whispers of a serial killer terrorizing the town became impossible to ignore. To this day, the Rivertown Strangler's identity remains a mystery. Was it someone the town knew and trusted? Or was it an outsider who slipped away unnoticed? The only certainty is this: Rivertown will never forget the shadow that once loomed over its quiet streets. 6 months after Caleb Myers' murder, Rivertown woke up to yet another nightmare. This time, the victim was 21-year-old Hannah Riggs, a college student home for the summer. Her body was discovered by a fisherman, tangled in the reeds along the riverbank. Hannah's death bore all the hallmarks of the Rivertown Strangler: strangulation marks, hands bound, and a chilling note left tucked into her shoe. It read, "3 down. Who's next?" This time there was a small but crucial piece of evidence, a strand of hair that didn't belong to Hannah. For the first time, investigators believed they might be able to put a face to the killer. Detective Alan Grayson had been leading the Rivertown Strangler investigation since the beginning, but as the months dragged on and the killer claimed more lives, the pressure began to take its toll. Grayson was haunted by the faces of the victims, their families, and his own growing sense of failure. In a private moment of despair, Grayson confessed to a colleague that he felt the case was slipping through his fingers. "It's like they're always one step ahead," he said. "Whoever this is, they know us better than we know them." Hope came in the form of a witness, a local bartender, who claimed to have seen Hannah Riggs with a man the night before her murder. According to her, the man was tall, wore a dark hoodie, and had a distinct scar running down his left cheek. The description was vague, but it was more than the police had before. They worked tirelessly to create a composite sketch, releasing it to the public in the hopes of identifying the man. But as the days turned into weeks, the lead went cold once again. Just when Rivertown began to think the nightmare was over, the killer made their boldest move yet. A local newspaper received a chilling letter, claiming responsibility for all 3 murders. The letter described the victims in gruesome detail, proving the writer was the killer. But it also revealed something even more disturbing: the killer wasn't finished. The letter ended with a cryptic message: "The game is only just beginning." It was a declaration of war against the town, and the police knew they were dealing with a criminal who thrived on attention. Victor Haynes, a 42-year-old handyman, was a quiet man who lived on the fringes of Rivertown society. He had a history of violent outbursts and was no stranger to the police, but his connection to the Rivertown Strangler case was circumstantial at best. Witnesses claimed to have seen him near the riverbank on the night of Hannah Riggs' murder, and a search of his home revealed rope matching the kind used on the victims. Despite the lack of direct evidence, Haynes was arrested and charged, bringing a temporary sense of relief to the town. But some in Rivertown weren't convinced of his guilt. "He's strange, sure," said one neighbor, "but a killer. I don't buy it." Then, just as Rivertown began to breathe again, the killer struck once more, leaving behind a note that read, "Wrong man. Try again." Months after Victor Haynes' arrest, a new clue emerged hidden in the attic of Jenny Callahan's childhood home. Her younger sister, cleaning out the house to sell it, stumbled upon an old diary Jenny had kept as a teenager. The entries were unremarkable at first, filled with musings about school and friends. But one entry stood out, a description of a summer camp counselor who made her uneasy. Jenny described the counselor as too friendly and mentioned how he often singled her out for attention. The description was vague, but it gave the police a new angle to investigate. Could the Rivertown Strangler be someone from Jenny's past? Someone who had harbored a twisted obsession for years? Detective Frank Milligan had retired from the force years ago, but the Rivertown Strangler case never left him. He spent his retirement poring over old evidence, convinced that he had missed something crucial. When he heard about Jenny Callahan's diary, he reached out to the current investigators with a theory: the killer wasn't a stranger to the town. It was someone they all knew. Milligan's theory was met with skepticism, but his determination was contagious. He pointed to inconsistencies in witness statements, overlooked evidence, and the killer's apparent familiarity with the victim's routines. "This isn't random," Milligan said. "This is personal." Following Milligan's theory, the police re-examined old leads, eventually focusing on a series of Polaroid photographs mailed to the station in 1982. The photos showed various locations around Rivertown, but one image stood out: an abandoned cabin deep in the woods, a place no one recognized. Inside the cabin, investigators found a chilling scene: ropes tied to a rusted bed frame, faded newspaper clippings about the murders, and a single Polaroid pinned to the wall. The photo showed a young woman standing on a dock, smiling Jenny Callahan. The discovery seemed to confirm Milligan's theory, but the cabin yielded no direct evidence linking it to the killer. It was another dead end, and the sense of frustration among investigators grew. Just when it seemed the case would never be solved, the Rivertown Strangler made a mistake, or so it seemed. A 19-year-old college student named Lisa Morgan was reported missing, only to be found hours later in a motel room, shaken but unharmed. Lisa told police that a man had approached her in a bar, offering to walk her home. She agreed, but soon realized something was wrong. He led her to the motel, tied her up, and whispered in her ear, "You're not the one." Then, without explanation, he untied her and left. Lisa's description matched the previous witness's account: a tall man with a scar on his cheek. But once again, the killer had slipped through the police's fingers. As investigators dug deeper into the victims' pasts, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. All of them had attended the same summer camp as children, and all had been assigned to the same counselor, a man named Charles Dwyer. Dwyer had left Rivertown decades ago, but records showed he had returned shortly before Jenny Callahan's murder. When police attempted to track him down, they discovered he had vanished again, leaving behind only a trail of unanswered questions. The Rivertown Strangler wasn't done playing games. A letter addressed directly to Detective Grayson arrived at the station, mocking his efforts to solve the case. "I know you're trying, Alan," the letter read, "but you'll never catch me. You're too close to see the truth." The letter was signed with a chilling postscript: "See you soon." The letter wasn't just a taunt, it was a challenge. And for Grayson, it was personal. He vowed to solve the case, no matter the cost. But with every passing day, the killer seemed to slip further out of reach. By 1989, the Rivertown Strangler seemed to have vanished. The murders stopped as abruptly as they had started, leaving the town in a state of uneasy relief. With no new leads and mounting pressure to close the case, the investigation was officially suspended. For Detective Grayson, it was a bitter defeat. "We did everything we could," Grayson told reporters, though his haunted expression said otherwise. The town tried to move on, But the unsolved murders cast a long shadow, and whispers of the killer's identity persisted in hushed tones. Decades later, in 2023, a rookie intern stumbled upon a box of forgotten evidence while reorganizing the station's archives. Among the files was a photograph that had never been entered into evidence, a grainy image of a young girl standing on a dock, smiling, with a man in the background. At first glance, the photo seemed innocuous, but when the intern compared it to the victim's files, a terrifying connection emerged. The girl in the photo was Jenny Callahan, taken just weeks before her murder. And the man in the background, he bore an eerie resemblance to Charles Dwyer, the elusive summer camp counselor who had disappeared all those years ago. The discovery reignited the case, prompting police to launch a renewed investigation into Dwyer's whereabouts. But tracking a ghost is no easy task, and the years had only added to the mystery. Was Dwyer still alive? And if so, had he been killing all this time, hiding in plain sight? To this day, the River Town Strangler remains one of the most infamous cold cases in American history. The discovery of the photograph raised more questions than answers, and the shadow of the killer continues to loom over Rivertown. Was justice ever truly within reach? Or did the killer outwit them all, slipping into the folds of history? One thing is certain, the secrets of Rivertown may never fully come to light. Subscribe for more mysteries.